What's going on, Latin Wealth family? Welcome to another episode to the Latin Wealth Podcast. I'm extremely excited about today's conversation because number one, we're at the Cosign studio in Dallas, Texas. So huge shout out to the Cosign team for allowing us to use this amazing space. And in addition, we also have another guest on the podcast. So you guys already know. Quick introduction about our guest today. She's a highly motivated and driven Latina entrepreneur, full-time content creator, and she's also a financial education and wellness coach for the next generation of investors. And overall, a super dope person, got an amazing story that we're going to jump into. Welcome to the Latin Wealth Podcast, Lea, the Latina wealth activist. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. You know, it's a rainy day in Dallas, but we made it. We made it past traffic, so I'm super excited to be here, honestly.
Dope. Love it. Yeah, it's funny because I think we spoke on the phone about a month ago, and I think you were on your way to Utah, which is where you're from. I think that weekend you were heading out to see your family and whatnot, which is dope. But it's crazy because I'm going to be honest, I've never met anybody from Utah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Let alone a Latina. So I would love for you to tell us, how did your family get to Utah? What was it about Utah that your family picked? And we're going to get into your story specifically, but I want to know that transition.
Yeah, so my parents' story is a big factor into my life. They crossed the border at different times in their childhood. They met in actually Utah, my parents. So they, from what they have told me, they migrated to LA. They all went to LA at one point in their lives. And then there was job opportunities in Utah. They were hearing about construction, landscaping, and things like that. And so my dad actually started his own maintenance company in Utah. Someone told him to go over there. There was opportunity, and especially as an immigrant, you don't really find a lot of those opportunities, especially back then, right? So for him, picking up leaves and mowing lawns was the next opportunity for him to build his own wealth. So he started a maintenance company in St. George, Utah. And I think it's the scenery that brought him to Utah because honestly, growing up there, I don't know what there is other than the scenery that will keep you there. But yeah, so he started his landscaping business there. And then my mom eventually, por un primo, se conectaron. And then my dad and my mom started dating. And I think over 25 years now, my parents have lived in southern Utah.
Yeah, and they're still over there?
Yep.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Okay, dope. So talk to us about your experience living in Utah and you just growing up in that household.
Yeah, so Utah is a beautiful place. If you haven't been there, there's Zion National Park. There's Lake Powell next door. Vegas is next door. You also have the northern Utah experience where you can go skiing, snowboarding. Best powder in the world is what they call it in Salt Lake City. And so you get a little bit of the snow and the summer heat and desert. And so people love to go hiking and do outdoors activities. And a lot of people like to think about Mormons when they think about southern Utah or even Utah in general, and there is a strong community of Mormons out there. So growing up as a Latina in a highly 100% community of Mormons, always being the only Latina in a room or the only person of color in the room too. So it was really hard to process all of that because I didn't really see the difference in my skin color until intermediate school, and someone would say, oh, well, you're not like me, or, because you have an accent. At that point in my life, I guess I had an accent. Now my English is pretty, they say whitewashed. Pero al igual, my parents just wanted me to be successful. They wanted me to grow up in a community that was safe, in a community where I would get really good education, because public school education is really good in Utah because we have, a lot of involvement in the public education. They put a lot of dollars in there. So, I went to public school. I didn't really have anything special about me until my grades started showing that. And that's where I was more of the books person in school because there was not a lot of people like me doing sports or activities. The only thing that I could trust was being a nerd in school. And even my experience was I would literally build a community of, I would call us the brownies. Back then, it was me, mixed girls, Polynesian girls, and Native American women. And we would all get together and hang out because we felt secluded in our own schools.
Yeah.
And so we built our own mini community, which really brought me this love for building community later on in life. I didn't know that's really where it rooted from, but even in our household, there were Salvadoreños, pero una comunidad bien chiquita, and it was all my cousins and primos, and so it was really hard to expand and find your own culture in Utah. So for me, living there was like, okay, well, this is one part. I'm already the one Latina, but then adding the fact that when I identified as queer, that was a whole other experience because that was a version of me that I had to hide in Utah.
Got it. Talk to us about your experience growing up in a household where your parents are entrepreneurs and business owners. Walk us through, what were the conversations like when speaking about money and business in your household?
Oh, yeah. So because my parents are entrepreneurs, I knew about business very, young. From the age of 5, I was with my dad working in, construction in his landscaping business because he already had maintenance, landscaping, and started expanding.
5 years old?
Yeah, from 5 years old, he would put me in his truck and he'd take me with him. He's like, vamos a trabajar, and so I would go with him. I would see him interact with clients. And, it's so funny. I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, oh, just my dad working, right? But as I grew older, I got more involved with his business because, he needed my help. He didn't know everything about business. He didn't know how to speak fully English, but he would get help from allies who would want to help him build his business. So eventually, once I started going to high school, I actually was also in college studying finance and business. And so that is where I really got more involved in that process of helping him with his systems and helping him with his accounts, doing his bookkeeping. And honestly, a lot of my knowledge comes from my dad. And, he's an immigrant. He's from El Salvador. And so learning from him, I guess I didn't take it. I took it for granted at first because I was like, okay, I'm learning from my dad, but it was just another day of entrepreneurship, another day of running a business. And that's why I really wanted to steer away from entrepreneurship when I was a kid.
Interesting. So there was a pivotal time, I think, when you were 12 years old, when you and your dad had a conversation and he basically told you, like, yo, I need you to be smart. I need you to be intelligent. I need you to be successful, right? I would love for you to tell the audience that story and walk us through, what made him tell you that, right? What, you know what I'm saying? Because I think a lot of parents say that by default to their children, like, you got to be smart, you got to get good grades. But the way that, from your perspective, it was like, no, it was like, this is a necessity. You got to make it happen.
So this memory is the one that sticks with me very deeply because it's like the ask that my dad gave me for my life and my career path. So everyone knows about the '08 financial housing crisis. A lot of people of color, Black and indigenous people of color were impacted by what happened here, right? So in '08, a lot of people got home loans through predatory practices, through either mortgage loan companies or banking institutions. They were offering loans with variable interest rates. Anywho, long story short, when the housing crisis started to begin, a lot of people started foreclosing on their homes, etc. My family was one of those impacted from losing their home after the '08 crisis.
Was it something like in the fine print that, what was it? You know what I'm saying?
So from my family's experience, it was more that they didn't understand the risks that they were getting involved in getting a home that was above their financial means. At that point, there wasn't a lot of regulatory practices or laws integrated into lending at that point. That's why after '08, it was harder to buy a home because they had more rules in place because they learned from the mistakes of '08. So for my family, it was they got too much house for the amount of money that my family was making at that point in time, and especially since they're tied to construction, they're tied to the construction and home, growth of, the economy of Southern Utah or Utah in general. So long story short, eventually we couldn't afford to pay for the light. We couldn't afford to pay for water. We would fight over who would get the shower in the morning or who would get the hot shower in the morning because, shoot, we were asking our tios and tias for money to pay for this house. And it was a nice house. Like, my dad really worked hard for this house, but he couldn't afford it. And so around, like, I was like 13, 14, navigating life, about to, go into sophomore, like middle school, high school, right? Freshman, become a freshman, not freshman, senior, freshman. My dad was telling us that, hey, we have to foreclose on the home. We've lost everything. And this is going to be our last week here, so we got to start packing. And I was like, okay. And I was going to go back downstairs to my room, like, understanding, okay, this is like my last, few weeks here at the home. And, my parents tried everything they could to keep the home. They wanted to refinance. They wanted to do anything possible so that they could get the home because we spent a lot of years not paying for the mortgage. And so when I was going down the stairs, he was like, Lea, quiero que seas inteligente. Quiero que seas mejor que yo. Because yo no quiero que sufres como yo he sufrido. Because especially as a Latino parent, and especially dad, a male figure, right? They don't want to feel like money is what they tie their success to, being able to pay for the bills, provide por el techo, la comida en la mesa. And my dad couldn't do that anymore. And so he trusted me. He was like, I need you to be better. I took that message and I was like, okay, Lea, your dad is literally begging you to be smart in school, to get good grades. And I was already doing that, but it made it more serious. It made it more like, Lea, this is what you need to do.
Did you feel any pressure from that moment?
Oh, hell yeah. I think.
How did you deal with it as well?
Therapy later on.
You guys are talking away from your mic.
Oh, okay, cool.
You said what?
You guys are talking away from your mic.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So the pressure that I felt with my dad telling me, hey, I need you to go to school. I need you to, be smart, essentially. It's what drove me through my education. Mm-hmm. So I got a bachelor's degree at the age of 19. Mm. It's what drove me to get a corporate career as fast as possible. At the age of 19, I entered and started working for a top investment bank. And I didn't realize the pressure that it caused me until I started deconstructing even how I felt, the controlness that I felt in my life. I started therapy around 2021 and didn't realize that a lot of the anxiety that I was feeling, because I felt like I had to leave my parents behind in order to pursue a corporate career. So I moved out when I was 19 as well. And you don't see that happening a lot in the Latin household where a female is leaving their parents' house, right? And so for me, it was like, okay, Lea, as much as you love them and as much as you're doing everything for them, you have to become your own person. You have to go through your own experience. And that's why I didn't want to push entrepreneurship, because I saw my dad fluctuate through, having a business, struggling to pay the bills. We lost the house, and now we have to, start all over. My dad had to rebuild his credit because there was bankruptcy involved with my family. And so I was like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that risk. So I'm going to pursue a corporate career. And that was another shift in my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And shout out to you for going to therapy so early on in your life, because 20, 21-year-old, I don't know too many people going to therapy at that age. And I think there's such a negative stigma attached to therapy. Even when I started going, like, people ask me, like, yo, what's up with you? Like, are you good? I'm like, I'm good. It's just like, look, some of the things that we've been through as a child, these things that we've seen as normal, they're really traumas that we need to dig up and fix and work on, right? And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to be the best that I can be. And, therapy can definitely help you with that. So you started in the corporate world. You talked to us about that, the company that you worked with. Yeah,
it was an experience. A lot of people know my experience with that company. So I worked at Goldman Sachs for 4 years.
And for the people that don't know Goldman Sachs, Can you give us some type of comparison, or like, I know it's a company that a lot of people in the financial space, they want to work at.
Yeah, it's like the Apple of tech. It's like the Google of like, compare it to that industry. It's like the Apple and the Google of banking, essentially. So Goldman Sachs used to be very exclusive in a sense that you had to have multi-million dollars to even be considered as a client when I first started. And then later on, they started launching their consumer banking division, where they were offering out what most people know as Marcus, their high yield savings account, and other products and loans that they now offer. But Goldman Sachs is very elite. Investment banking is very elite. There's only certain personalities that can really succeed in this industry, because it's very intense, meaning millions to billions of dollars on the line if you make a mistake. Any trade, any information, little detail that's not put on, their regulatory information, like, they cannot do business. And so it was very competitive. It was, my first 2 years working there, I was in the client onboarding division, helping people, get onboarded with their legal information. So I did a lot of research on how to identify what's an LLC versus, a partnership business, and what type of business are they doing, what's their SIC code. These are all banking words, right? So, anywho, long story short, at first I was like, oh my God, I'm breaking generational curses. I'm working in the corporate world. I'm creating this life that is now secure, that is giving me stability. Okay. But also, I'm a first-gen Latina, and I'm also queer. And I have to navigate these identities in a corporate setting that I've never experienced before. Because corporate culture in itself is very different than like our own home culture or even college culture. And so when I entered, it was a culture shock, because not only did I see people from all over the world in this bank, in this office in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I also saw layers to my job. Like, okay, yes, you have this task, but you also have to network with certain individuals to grow your career. You also have to be like your manager's favorite. You also have to, network with people you don't even know, and know upstream and downstream processes that you didn't even think would tie to your job, but it does. And so it was, the first 2 years was like, oh my God, I'm here, I did it. And then after that, like the last 2 years, I started going to therapy. Okay. So therapy really dug out that trauma for me. And I started discovering my relationship to my job and the stress that it was causing me, because I no longer had a work and life balance. I had a manager who really just didn't treat me with a lot of respect, even though he needed me so much in this role. There was just things that happened in my internal team that made me really uncomfortable in working in that space, and especially for my mental health. And when my therapist was like, your manager is the cause of your depression and your anxiety, and that's the reason why you don't want to go to work, that is when I was like, all right, what am I doing, right? So I decided to switch teams, thinking that it was going to make a difference. I'm going to switch teams because, yes, sometimes it's organizational, meaning your manager and your direct managers are the culture of that company, not essentially the full entire culture of the company. So I even went into tech. So I was doing more of email management for the tech side of the business. And even with that, it was just like there's a lot of things that happened, but I was still overworked, underpaid, and undervalued. And I'll tell you why. And a lot of people, especially as first gen, we don't know what to do in these corporate settings. We're just trying to navigate life. We're just like, okay, we got this opportunity. Let's just go. But for me, it was like, okay, Lea, I need to be the best, right? I have this little voice in my head from my dad talking to me at like 12 years old, like, Lea, you need to get your shit together, right? You need to be intelligent. So that voice was always in my head. And because I wanted to be more successful, that mean I had to be overworked. I needed to work more. I needed to do more, right? But I was talking to a coworker, and I was like, okay, it's comp time. They told me if I work in this role for a year, I will get good comp next year, right? So a lot of bankers wait for comp season, right, to see what their new salary and their bonus is going to be, because they say in banking your bonuses are fat. That's a lie. No, it's not. No, it really just depends on the market and the performance of the business. But
and so we're not to cut you off, Was this office in Utah? Where you
Yeah,
at? Oh,
yeah,
okay,
I was in
cool.
Utah. Yeah, I was all in Utah. I didn't leave Utah until recently. So yeah, this was all based out of Utah. And I was talking to my coworker, like I was saying, and I was like, so how much money do you make? I was like, I want to know how much money you make because comp season is around the corner and you just got onboarded. I'm teaching you what I know. So I want to know what you make so I know that that's like my base level, right? Tell me why she tells me that she makes $60,000 more than me.
Wow.
60,000. Go for her. Well deserved.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
Wow.
Not saying that she doesn't deserve that. No, she deserved it. But the difference between me and her is that I was an internal hire, meaning I grew up in the business and she was a lateral hire, which means she is external. She already has market value. My market value is whatever Goldman dictates. So that is where I had a problem. I had a big problem because I was like, okay, I just got my master's degree in finance and information systems to be the best product manager you ever had on your team. And you're telling me now that I'm $60,000 underpaid. Comp season is in 2 months. So I'm trying to prepare this conversation, right? You eventually learn the corporate politics of how to navigate that conversation. And
Did you feel yourself conforming to like that corporate world? I mean, you talked about your identity as a queer woman, as a Latina. Did you feel yourself like moving away from who you were a little bit?
Yes, I was completely disconnected from my purpose, from what I even wanted to do in my life. Like I said, my work consumed me to the point that outside of work, what I was talking about with my friends was work.
What was your purpose at that point?
In my head, I was like, I'm gonna become an MD at Goldman Sachs. I'm gonna be the only queer Latina managing director in this bank. I'll make a difference. That's what I thought.
So comp season comes around, you're preparing for it.
Yeah, comp season comes around. They tell me, Lea, so you are a senior associate on this team, and unfortunately, pandemic happens. I look at these. I have a master's degree in finance, right? So I learned how to study financial statements. So I went to their financial statements. I looked at how much money they were putting towards compensation for the last quarter, and I was like, they're not putting money in compensation. They're putting it in their cash, which means they're hoarding their money to protect themselves for any risk in the pandemic. And they're going to do it at the cost of also their employees. Because even though they're making good money, they were announcing, oh my God, it's a top year of our business. And when I was looking at the math ain't mathin' for their employees. So tell me why they tell me, Lea, we're going to remove your overtime and we're going to make you a full-time salary because they had different structures of exempt and non-exempt for overtime. And so they're like, we're going to remove your overtime, which I was working hella overtime, and we're just going to pay you $63,000. I have 4 years in, a senior associate at this point. And my coworker makes over that, like close to 120,000. So I'm over like, okay. So how do I have this conversation that my peers make more than me? I know all my peers make more than me. They all make 6 figs. They're in tech, right? And here I am teaching this other person who makes more than me. She deserves it. But also I'm like, okay, what about me, right? So we had that conversation and they kind of took that with like, okay, Lea, but that's not how our policies work. You're internal hire. You kind of go through this process. HR thinks this is the best rate for you and your experience and your, what you offer to the team. And I was a top performer, don't get me wrong. And I was like, okay, if that's what you could do for me. Okay, I'm gonna take that. Okay, so I accepted it, even though I'm losing money because that overtime was having me make over 70,000. Okay, 70 to 80,000 is what I was making with overtime. So telling me no overtime, I'm losing money, right? I got big mad. I was like, okay, so what do I do to fight back, right? I'm like, I got to start a side hustle. I got a mortgage to pay because I had bought a home in Salt Lake City at that point. I thought I was going to be so secure here, right? So I have that conversation, go back home, start talking to my older brother. My older brother lives in Spain. He's an entrepreneur. He teaches English to Asian students. He has a whole company, and he's opening and starting an app. And so I was going to talk to him. He's wise, right? My older brother. And he was like, Leah's just start your own business, start a side hustle. start a passive income. We're in the pandemic, go home, think of something that you're good at that you love and start something. And I knew I always wanted to help my comunidad because at this point, I'm having a come to Jesus moment. Like, what am I doing? If I work for this bank, I've been working for, here almost 4 years. I'm like, and there's still, I feel like I have to fight for my value, even though they know what I'm doing and they know how I'm performing. They know I will go. I've been working 2 a.m. For them. I've been working for our Bangalore time zone, our Warsaw time zone. I'm over here working multiple time zones for them. And for what? To make more multi-billionaires rich? What about my people? What are they doing? Losing their jobs in the pandemic. At home, unemployment, can't work because they're in the service industry. All my friends are telling me, Lea, I don't know what to do. I have my business. I can't go to work. We're all in lockdown. I don't know what to do with my money. And I'm like, okay, this is what you should do. Here's quick tips, okay, do you have your savings, emergency fund? Start talking. I started having those conversations with them because through my own education, I learned personal finance. So I'm over here like, okay, I think I can do that as a side hustle. I can help people with their business because thank you, Daddy. Daddy taught me how to run a business. And so I was like, I can start one. My dad did it. I know the skill sets. I know how to talk to clients. I know how to help people even start their own business and run it correctly. I was like, okay, I'm going to take this knowledge that I learned in banking, turn what I learned from my daddy, learn what I learned from school. I'm going to make this business. And then...
No, go ahead.
No, and it just all came together.
I was just going to say, like, so when people ask, like, yo, what type of side hustle should I start? Like, I don't know what side hustle to start. You just broke it down in a way where I think damn near anybody can do it, right? Take what you're knowledgeable about, maybe take something that you've known about for a long time and put it together and, create a service or product out of that. I think a lot of times people just simply overthink the ability to bring in more income, right? And I love that you took what's already been taught to you over the years and you just found a group of people that needed this information at a really good time where, like you said, businesses were closing down, people were losing their job, unemployment and all that, so they needed your service. So you started putting this information out on social media a little bit, and then your job found out about it, right? And walk us through that point and what happened when they found out.
Yeah, so, it's a moment that I'm like, it happened.
Yeah.
I was trying to follow the rules. So I talked to a mentor and I was like, hey, so I have this side hustle. I'm not really making a lot of money, but I just opened an Instagram for it. I've only been helping my family, but I think I can do something with it. I think I could change the world with this. I think I could make an impact into my community because clearly there is no one providing services for Latinx or even Black communities here in Utah. Period. Any consulting, any finance, education, support, nothing.
Wow.
And so I have a market that's been untouched. I took what I knew from what I learned and I was like, okay, there's a market that I can serve and I'm really passionate about this. So what do you think I should do? I want to open my LLC. I want to get this started. I want to get this flowing. And she was like, okay, well, all you have to do is report it to compliance. Just fill out this form.
You got to report what you're doing in your free time to your job. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's just how it works. And because they have a lot of regulatory policies in banking. So I understand why.
Yeah. It can be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, conflict of interest. So that's what ended up happening. So I had reported it. They denied my request. And I was like, okay, they denied my request. So I'm going through this mental battle of, do I pick me or do I pick them, right? Make zero income, not know how much money I can make, take that risk that my parents have always taken, or just follow the way that I was taught, institutionalized to believe that is the road to go. Get a corporate job, move up the ladder, and ta-da, you made it, right? So tell me why they deny me, and then I have my Instagram still open because people were starting to follow me, like my friends and my family, they were supporting me, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep it up. So then around February, so around this time, 2 years ago, they put a notification on my calendar, hey, you have a scheduled meeting with compliance and my senior manager. And so they found out, obviously I was honest, and they say, Lea, you have a conflict of interest with your business and with your role at Goldman Sachs? And I was like, well, I'm in tech. I'm no longer in client onboarding. I'm not no longer tied to any service. I'm literally back end. And I have this business that is going to help people that has nothing to do with what you do. It's all very small scale. These are not people you're ever going to touch. And they pretty much said, pick your business. Either you close your LLC and continue to work here and you'll be fine. Or if you don't, there's going to be repercussions. There's going to be risks, right? Yo de mensa, I don't like saying I was mensa, pero I didn't know. I didn't know at all because no one teaches you that you know, how to speak to compliance or HR. But I was like, well, I'm already in discussions with my manager about my compensation, and I'm considering leaving because I'm not being compensated my value, right? And so they said, oh, well, since you're not,
You left that
you're
door
like,
open.
since you're already trying to get leave, like, might as well, like,
Yeah.
this is your last day. Here's the link to resign. My senior manager just sent me the link, and he's like, I'm so sorry. And that's it.
Yeah. So the way I look at that situation is, I know, and you've told before, afterwards, you know, it was something difficult to deal with. Like you were depressed. You know, you was at your parents' house and you was going through it, right? The way I look at that situation, and I've kind of been through something similar, where sometimes, I mean, obviously God had a bigger purpose for you. And I believe sometimes God just got to snatch you up by the neck and put you where you need to be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The whole time you're telling your story, like you're talking about your community, how you want to get back, how you want to leave an impact. And, you know, you're investing more into another company than you are into your own community. And I'm telling you, sometimes it's happened to me, like literally damn near the same situation where God would just snatch you up by the neck and be like, I need you over here doing this. So you get fired, and you know, the next couple of weeks, I know you're going through it emotionally. You're trying to figure it out. And then I know your dad comes in and was like, yo, you got to, all right, come on, turn up. It's time to get going.
Yeah.
So walk us through, what was the next thing after that? You had your Instagram account. You're helping people out. All right, it's time to get up out the bed. Your dad's like, it's time for you to get moving. What's next?
Yeah, so I was having a whole Lea's dying. My whole identity was gone. You know, I thought I was going to be that MD. No, that didn't really happen. So, you know, morning, and my dad's like, okay, hacer dinero, levántate. Y yo como que, okay, well, let me mourn a little bit. Like, I'm sad.
Right.
You know, but he's like, Lea, this is what I work. This is why I do what I do. So sell your house, move in with us, and start your business. And I was like, okay, that's like my whole life is up there, right? But this is in a moment where me and my dad actually started communicating again after a few months of not talking. Because of my queer identity, there's a lot of homophobia in my cultura, and especially at home. And so this is the first time that me and my dad are you know, actually coming together to respect one another and be there for each other. So for me, I was like, okay, my dad says it's okay, so we're good to go, I guess. So I just really started posting on Instagram my story and being fully vulnerable with the community that I was making. My community started with like 40 people, then it was built to 100, 200, 2,000. And it was just me being vulnerable, me sharing my experience, me sharing that, hey, like, shit happens, clearly. Life cannot be controlled, but what we can control, what we can protect is our money and our wealth, right? Because I don't want people to go through my mistakes. Because when I got not fired, I literally resigned, but when I went through that whole experience, I wasn't ready for it. A lot of people were like, Lea, are you really going to take this risk and resign and not have income to pay your mortgage and everything? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take that risk. I'm going to take that shot for me. This is the only time I can take that shot. So I'm going to take it. And
how old were you at this time?
I was 22, 23. Yeah. So I just, life has been very interesting in the sense that it's just put me directly onto the path that I need to go. Anytime that I've redirected, like you said, God picked me up and he's like, sorry, you had that vision, psych. No, this is where you need to be because we need you. Because like I said, in this moment in time, not a lot of people were talking about money. There's a few Instagram accounts that were talking about it. but never from a perspective of vulnerability and actually going through the struggle, right? I struggled in a way that's very different. Like, it's not the same struggle as someone who grows up in South LA or East LA, but like, it was a struggle in my community, right? Because that's a whole different ball game there, right? So I feel very privileged to say that we could, rely on people to help us out, right? So I move in with my parents. I start working, right? And opportunities just started rolling in. Like, I see you, Lea. What you say resonates with me. Your experience, oh my God, can you help me? I've never seen someone talk about the first gen experience like that. Or, my parents were affected in the '08 crisis. And I was like, oh my God, there's more of me. I was like, there's more of my comunidad out there that's not in Utah. There's very few that would say I'm from Utah. It's usually my friends from high school that would be like, oh yeah, I resonate. I was like, yeah, we grew up together. But then people from LA would come in and talking to me. People from Miami, people from New York, people from Texas. And I was like, people see me like that, I didn't think that me, small town, that's my limited belief, that I was like a small town girl would ever be in a place like this. But I'm very confident that I'm very aligned with my purpose. I'm very aligned of where I need to be because, like you said, God took me out of where I wasn't supposed to be. And that experience taught me a lot. Don't get me wrong. I learned a lot about the big boys up there.
Yeah, for sure.
But now coming back to my comunidad, I have a lot of knowledge to share that for me, ¿para qué me sirve tenerlo aquí en la mente? Like, why does it matter to have it in my brain and not share it with my community? There's no purpose for it to just sit there, like, and sit with a storage bag. Like, no, mejor it's better to share the knowledge, like you're doing, here today. It's so important that we be outspoken and take up the space that we've never taken.
100%. And I love the fact that you were so vulnerable. Pretty sure you were sharing your story and everything that you're going through. And I think that's a gem in itself, because when you're vulnerable, when you show up the most vulnerable that you can be and the most real that you can be, people recognize that and they're willing to invest in you. They're willing to look out for you. They're willing to help you. And if you offer a product or service, they're willing to rock with you and follow you. And I mean, it proved for you. You said you started off with 40 followers and now you at over 20,000 or something crazy like that. And like over 80,000 on TikTok, probably more. Man, that's super dope. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'd love for you to talk about what you specifically do now and how are you helping the community, right? Like what are some questions that I'm asking, like 3 questions in one. Like what are you doing now, and like what are some ways that you're helping the community?
Yeah, so primarily now life is crazy, man, because even a year ago I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, but I'm primarily a creator on TikTok and Instagram for financial education. And my secondary job is coaching. So I do financial coaching and helping individuals create a relationship with money that gives them back the power to take control of their finances so that money no longer controls them, right? Because we have financial systems that were put in place against us. And through my own experience, my way of fighting back, my way of showing that, we can do better.
Are there, not to cut you off, is there still systems that you see nowadays that are put in place that are against Black and brown community? And if so, what does that look like for the people that don't know?
Yeah, I just made a video about this, but the one thing about it is a lot of banks do not take ITIN. So if you have immigrated into the United States and you don't have a social security number or immigrant community, they probably come and, like, okay, where do I start? Well, an ITIN is one of the first levels of documentation to get, a bank account, to get a credit card. You can still invest and do a lot of things even without having a social security number. A lot of people don't know that because they don't really talk about it. And a lot of banks don't even have that in place. Some banks do, some banks don't, which already takes a group of people, puts them to the side, and that's why they go to the, what's it called, the easy pay stuff, where like they go and exchange checks, because they don't have a bank account, so they need it in cash.
I think I was reading a statistic recently that I think only 3% of white households don't have a bank. 12% of Latino households don't have a bank. So that's a huge gap.
Yeah,
That's
compared
huge.
to our communities, yeah, and I think FDIC just announced another report that 30% of Latinos are actually unbanked, so completely like unbanked. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the last statistic that I saw. But
And what you're saying probably obviously contributes to that, but I also think it's probably the fear and like you said, the relationship with the bank, where a lot of us just grew up just putting our money underneath the mattress, you know what I'm saying? And, we don't have a relationship with the bank. You know what I'm saying? That's something that you were seeing a lot as well?
yeah, and as well as like you think about it, nuestra gente they come from países where also their own government has failed them. That's why they left, right? A lot of them left through financial collapse through their own countries, or just not being able to create wealth in their own countries. So they migrate to the United States thinking there's a better opportunity, right? But a lot of those opportunities are hard to get if you don't know the ins and outs of the system that weren't really created for you to succeed and learn and understand, which is like getting an ITIN, or the fact that savings accounts interest is at 0.03% or 0.04% with regular banking institutions like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, and Bank of America. And then you have new products like high yield savings account where you're getting 3 to 4% interest rate. You literally, Wall Street Journal posted an article and said Americans lose $603 billion because their savings account is with a big bank versus the newer products of like a high yield savings account. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money and wealth that's being taken away through these big banks and not given back in return. It'd be different if they gave you, this lower interest rate in your savings account, but they were doing more for you, offering you better interest rates for your loans. But a lot of people just have their account, they put their money in, and then lo guardan. They save it and save it and save it, gaining pennies over the span over the years versus, 10% interest, 4% interest, even if it's just saving, right? It's not investing, completely different concept. It's just saving.
Yep.
But 4% can make a difference.
Yeah. So you talked about that you, for the most part, you're a content creator, but you also do coaching. Walk us through a coaching session. Somebody's coming to you, they're paying for your service. What does that typically look like for you? Like, what are some common questions that people are asking? I'd love to get some of those questions answered on this episode.
So one thing that we talk about, and a lot of people come to me, is like, I don't know how to look at my money. I can't even look at my bank account. It's overwhelming. Mi mami no me enseñó. Mi papi no me enseñó. I didn't learn it in school. So where do I start? Where do I begin? And what's crazy is I don't start with the numbers. I don't go and say, okay, how much debt you have? How much is your savings? No. I start about what is your relationship to money now? What happened in the past? How was your upbringing? What is your money story, right? And a lot of people start thinking, okay.
Getting that mind right.
Yeah, like, okay, well, I had a client once tell me that her dad burned money in front of her to kind of a power move of saying like money doesn't matter.
Wow,
and
that's crazy.
That impacted her relationship with money as an adult, where now she's a money hoarder, where she doesn't like to spend on herself.
That's crazy.
Of that, situation that happened in her upbringing. And we couldn't identify that until we dissected what was her story, where did she grow up, right? Everybody has different experiences. And like I said, growing up in California is very different than growing up in Texas,
100%.
right? Completely different experiences. I can't say I relate to an experience of someone in California, where the struggle can be real versus in Utah, the struggle ain't real there. People who say we struggle, it's very hard to struggle in Utah because you already have to have a lot of money to live in Utah because it's very expensive. So, at least now. But when we dissect all those things, it's like, oh really? My dad played a part into that? I'm like, yeah, I think so. I mean, they come to the next session and they're like, Lea, so yeah, I was looking at how I spend and I was looking at how my dad spends. We're the same. And I'm like, I wonder why, right? Like you learn from your parents. Whoever's that masculine energy in your family, sometimes it's the mother. If you're in a single, mom household, your mother is working. Your mother is grinding. Your mother's trying to bring in the money. And whatever I had a client tell me, well, my mom also loved to shop. My mom would get paid. All the kids be going shopping together. And then that's a habit that they developed in their own adulthood. Of every time they got paid, they would blow their money, right? So it's identifying that relationship with money of their past, that now their present was the damage they did. Like, what have you done now that you want to work on it now? Are you really ready? Because I have a lot of people who want to work with me, and then after like the first 3 sessions, they're like, okay, this is overwhelming, or they just ghost me, literally, because I think that conversation with money can be really overwhelming. And a lot of people feel like they're a failure, and I'm like, no, we are all in different journeys. We're all trying to find alignment with our money, finding something that's balancing our life. You know, I'm not prioritizing how much dollars you're investing. I'm not prioritizing the amount of money you're saving. I'm trying to prioritize your relationship with money that's best fit for your lifestyle. Because I have a client who can invest $200 a month into their 401k, and I have someone who can't even invest in their 401k because they're trying to conquer their debt. Right? And there's all these different relationships with money that we have to navigate. And so that's what we're discovering in our coaching sessions is where do you also want to be too, right? We're understanding your past, where you are now, what you're able to do, but also where do you want to go? How can I help you get there? Even if it's from 6 months from now or a year from now, because you can change a lot of your habits. You know, 21 days is the model, right? But you can completely change your journey, your relationship with money, your story. You no longer have to tie to that story of like, oh, my dad burned money in front of me. I no longer have to tie to my dad lost our house in the '08. You know, it's a part of me. It's a part of my story, but it's no longer a part of like where I'm going. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. What are some of the most common unhealthy money habits or like spending habits that you typically see with these clients, or even on social media, you know, creating content? Maybe people are commenting or sending you DMs. What are like the most common ones?
A lot of people love their credit cards, even me. I have a working relationship with credit cards. But a lot of people rely on their credit cards as the emergency fund, as what we use our credit card to buy things when I haven't got my paycheck yet. And I'm like, okay. And so what are you doing when you do get your paycheck? Well, I'm spending it on things that I want. So I'm like, so what about your credit card? She's like, well, it's there. And I'm like, okay, so you paying your credit card? No, like minimums, right? And that's how you start accumulating debt, by neglecting that credit card payment. And I'd like to put this into perspective for individuals. That 25% interest is going to those big banks in the first place. So if you leave money there, just know you're funding them. 25% or 22%. Right now, credit card interest rates are high because the Fed has interest rates high, so therefore it's playing into your debt.
They're not bringing them down either.
Yeah, and they're not going to bring them down, at least anytime soon.
Right.
So when we're talking about this, what I see, the patterns, they just avoidance. They don't want to look at their bank account. They get their paycheck and they go, they're like, I work so hard for this money, so I'm gonna go spend. I'm gonna go to the bars. I'll go drop it on alcohol. And don't get me wrong, I love to go to the bar, go to a happy hour, but also that shit adds up. These habits add up. And so we have to kind of go back down to the basics. Okay, what happens if we remove that credit card? Can you manage your finances? Can you still pay your bills if your credit card wasn't involved? A lot of people can say yes, a lot of people can say no.
I think it's that instant gratification too. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? People, like you said, they work so hard for their money, and they want to feel good about what they just worked hard for, whether it's a pair of shoes or, like you say, going to the bar or something. And if we can, as a community, learn to delay that gratification, we hear that a lot, you can set your future up, a lot better, right?
Yeah, and it's not even a lot that you have to put away,
I think I keep cutting you off, I'm sorry. But I think it's more of the, like, getting into the habit of doing it, right? Whether it's $5, $10, $500. And I love that you brought up, like, it depends on your lifestyle. If you're not making as much as the next person, it's fine. Let's put away $50 a month to get you in that habit, to get you to have that discipline to start saving and to get you where you want to be.
It's 100% important that you understand the lifestyle that you have and also the lifestyle that you can afford. It's what we call lifestyle creep, right? So you could be creeping on your money, meaning you're overspending, thinking that you can have this lavishly life that they say on TikTok that every hot girl has, but that's not the reality of it, right? Like, your reality is a little bit different. You got more bills to pay, unfortunately. And not saying that you can't have that type of lifestyle. I'm not saying that. I'm saying prioritize paying off your bills first, and then go get your facial, and then go splurge on whatever you want to be splurging on, right? What I've, with one of my clients, I was just having this conversation because now we're working like about 5 months together. So last few sessions, because we worked for 6 months. And she's like, in the session, I was like, okay, so tell me about your weekend. It's the first of the month. What'd you do with your paycheck? Did you get your, other paycheck? Because she has 2 jobs. She's a veteran, or she's currently in active military, but she's about to be released. And I told her to get another job so she has something lined up, and it's something that she loves. She's a trainer. So she's like, Lea, I got my training paycheck, and I paid off my furniture loan, and I paid off my credit card, and I did, and then I'm waiting for my next paycheck, and I'm gonna put more to my savings. And she's like, and then I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. And I was like, yes. That's what we're here for. I was like, do you see how different this was from like 5 months ago when you would have gotten that money? Where would have gone? She's like, Gymshark. I'm like, yeah, probably. Right? And so it's really just reframing the mindset of prioritizing, yes, your financial well-being and also your life, whatever that looks like, right? So I'm telling her, all right, did you save, pay off your credit card, or pay your credit card? Because, some people are also in payment plans, like trying to figure out, what works for their lifestyle to pay off their debt. And it's okay. Because debt is neutral. At the end of the day, it served us a purpose at one point. Yes, probably we're chollando esa tarjeta like no other, but we forgive ourselves, we move on, and we pay it off, okay?
Right.
We can't stay with that debt, but it's like that transformation of being real with yourself. You're like, you know what? I did that. I have some clients that tell me, Lea, I did it. I was like, what'd you do? She's like, so, and it's being honest. It's being like, okay, so let's recalibrate.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it? And I ask them to tell me versus me tell them. Because I want them to reframe their mindset. Instead of punishing themselves, they're going to actually create rewarding, actionable steps to conquer whatever they feel like, maybe they're overspent or have debt.
I love that you said acknowledge it and forgive yourself. Let it go. You know what I'm saying? You made the mistake. Let's figure out how we can do better and fix it next time. Shifting gears a little bit, I'm curious. So we have like a group of Latinos that are listening to this, and there's a lot of information on here. Maybe they don't have the funds to, hit you up and like, purchase one of your services or engage with you. But where would you give, like, where should these people start? You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say. Is like, where should they start? There's so much information out there. There's so many people to follow. People talking about crypto. People talking about stock options, paying off credit card debt. Like, there's just so much information. And I think that causes people not to do anything at all. Like, it's just so much that they're consuming and they don't do nothing. Where would you suggest for our community to start? Where would you like them to start?
Knowledge is power. I'm going to just say with that. So start educating yourself through books. And I know that sounds so antiguo, so old school, but books have a lot of knowledge, even from books written 50 years ago. I'm currently starting a book club. It's called Crecer Book Club, and we're reading Think and Grow Rich, and it was written in 1937. This book is old, right? But it has so much knowledge in it. I'm reading it, and I'm like, damn, they were talking about manifestation back in 1937. And I'm over here now reading this book, and I'm learning and reframing my mindset too. But there's so much information overload through TikTok and Instagram. Like now, financial literacy content is just available everywhere. Everywhere. Like you can get advice from anybody at these days, right? On TikTok, YouTube, even podcasts. But remember, finances are personal. No one has your same experience, right? You will have to customize what you learn to your specific life. Because yes, I might say, hey, it's really good to pay off, your credit cards, but maybe you don't have the funds to pay off your credit cards. So we got to start with the minimum payments. But maybe you have a balance transfer. It gets real complicated. So you have to, I like reading books as a starter point because these are people who have expertise, who have years of knowledge that they've, said, okay, I'm going to put it in a book. Another book that's really great is We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. Highly recommend it as an empowerment book of giving you that confidence to be that next version of yourself. Because mindset is really what it starts with, though. Like, as much as like I said, there's financial literacy content everywhere, but your mindset really is what makes or breaks your relationship with money, your relationship with your friends, life in general, because I'm telling you, if I sat and compared myself to everybody, or said, what if I, had this, or, I can't have this because of this, I'm comparing myself, I'm down, like putting that negative energy out there. I'm not aligned anymore because I'm so down. I have a lot of people telling me, well, I just grew up here. I'm from, Minnesota, or I'm from somewhere that doesn't have a lot of community or doesn't have a lot of resources. And I'm like, you can be better than them. We can get you the resources that you need to align yourself with the path that you want in your life, right? And there's a lot of content out there. I love books. There's always creators with workshops, but I always like to recommend that we need to background check our creators sometimes. I think that's really important, to go on LinkedIn, look at their experience, what impact they've done with the community. If you want to get advice from a creator of someone like me, or even someone who's just posting money content, right? Because like I said, finances are so personal, but I like to always go back to the basics of books.
Yeah, love that. And we can start wrapping this thing up pretty soon. And I know, if I'm not mistaken, you have a financial literacy and empowerment workshop coming up soon.
So I'm planning one. I was gonna do one a little more sooner, but I moved.
Okay.
So I have one coming in March.
Okay. That's still pretty soon. So for the people out there that want to connect with you and learn more about this whatever you're doing with the workshop and whatnot, the events, where can people reach out to you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me, the Latina Wealth Activist, on Instagram and TikTok. My website is latinawealthactivist.com. If you want to learn more about my services, any workshops, any events, you can go to the riquezaco.com, where I have all my resources, as well as I have a free club where people can learn with me. Like, my book club is free because I think knowledge should be accessible. So I try to do my very best in making things as accessible as possible, but also gotta get paid, because we got this experience and it ain't free.
Absolutely.
So you can find me there. I do my very best to, my mission is really to just talk money in a real and transparent way, to give financial education and make it accessible, because it is a privilege to know financial literacy, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And one last question: who is one person that needs to be in a Latin Wealth podcast? The only exception is you got to be able to know them.
Who should I bring on to the Latin Wealth podcast? Let me see. I'm trying to think. Have to be with money.
Anybody, can be entrepreneur. It can be whoever.
Let's call on La Valletera.
Okay.
La Valletera, she provides a financial education in Spanish. And so I really love her content. She's Boricua. And so she's out there living in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So I love her content. Yeah.
Cool. Dope. We'll definitely have to connect with her. Yeah. And with that being said, you guys know where to find us on Instagram, at Latin Wealth on Instagram. This episode is going to be available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you stream your podcast. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in. It's your boy Chris. Catch you guys next week. Peace.